Hello, everyone. We welcome you all to another amazing session from Brain Aura. So, as you all are aware, we bring you various topics regarding the PhD grads and in the academic field, and we try to resolve your questions in that. So, before we begin with our today's topic, I would like to give a brief introduction about Brain Aura. We are a small team of experts from various academic and industrial backgrounds. Our services are cohesively designed for young PhD grads, academicians, researchers, and entrepreneurs. We provide services ranging from thesis writing support, research support, data analysis, skill development, and much more. To know more about us, please do visit our website www.brainaura.com. So, for today's topic, it is challenges in scientific writing. And our today's speaker is Dr. Sri Ranjani Arumuga. She is an expert scientist in the field of biophysical chemistry with publications in internationally reputed journals. She is experienced, detail oriented, specialized in this area, as well as developing new applications and products. She is a recipient of research grants, highly skilled in overseeing research office activities, and she mentors to undergrad, postgrad, and PhD students. She is also a public science communicator. So, Dr. Sri Ranjani, we welcome to you our today's session.
Thank you, Niti.
And I hope you're all set for the number of questions we'll be asking you, because these are the questions which a lot of students have been asking us. So we have collated certain of them, and we hope that it will be an amazing session.
Yeah, I hope so. Sure.
So I would like to start with the first question, which is a pretty common one. How important is the title for any journal? And what are the points to be considered in setting up a title?
Okay. So, the title is the first detail or phrase of any paper that is read. So it has to be concise, precise, and meticulous is the key words we use. So because we know that title and abstract are the only free section available to any reader from the journal website or search engines or many abstracting agencies or databases. So one has to have a very catchy, at the same time, simple, direct, accurate title for any journal. For instance, the title of a paper is generally about concise, about 10 to 15 words.
Okay.
So it has to make an initial impression of a research article.
Okay.
So for instance, some of the key points we need to consider is it has to be simple and direct. It should be interesting and informative.
Yeah.
It should be specific, accurate, and functional, including the keywords for indexing. So generally when we write a paper, we give keywords. So it's better to have few keywords in the title. And it should be precise and should include the main theme of the paper.
Okay.
And it should not be very misleading
Yeah.
or misinterpretive. And it should not be too long, like 10 to 15 words is good, a good number words for a title. It should not be too short, like cryptic titles.
Okay.
And it's better to use familiar and simple words than using amusing words. And it should also be, we have to avoid non-standard abbreviations or unnecessary acronym.
Okay.
And then you can put the place of study or sample size only if it adds to the scientific value of the title.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's better to avoid it and go for a general title. And like important terms or keywords should be placed in the beginning of the title.
Okay.
So one can have descriptive title is prepared than something like declarative titles. And authors generally should adhere to the word count which is specified by the journals. So these are the few key points we have to keep in mind while we are formulating the title. Usually the title and the abstract are written after the main text of the paper is written. So that's the way to go, because that by drafting a full paper, we will have an idea. So we can have a precise, concise, and simple title for the research paper.
Okay, that sounds good. So, coming to our second question, I would, because after the title, writing an abstract for the paper is equally important. And one of the challenges that students have come across is figuring out the approximate word count. So, what do you
Mhm.
suggest? What should be the right word count for an abstract?
Okay, so like abstract is basically a summary synopsis of the full research paper,
Yeah.
and it also have to have a similar characteristics like the title. So it has to be simple, direct, specific, clear, and unbiased and honest. And usually it is an independent and a standalone abstract of the manuscript, the whole manuscript.
Okay.
So by reading an abstract, people should get an idea of the full manuscript.
Yeah.
So for instance, not only the readers, when reviewers like us, when we get a paper, we get only the title and the abstract first.
Mhm.
So this will decide the fate of the entire paper.
Yeah.
So it's like a real trailer of the full article. So one has to highlight the selling point of the manuscript. So if you have a descriptive abstracts are generally very short. They are about 75 to 150 words.
Yeah.
And each journal has its own what do you call the word count
Yeah.
for title for this thing. Descriptive abstract are short, so they are about 75 to 150 words. But most journals allow 200 to 300 words. So I
Okay.
would say 250 would be a good number for a word limit. 250 words.
Okay. That sounds good. And then another question that comes up is like after the abstract, how to write the effective introduction?
Okay. So introduction is it has to catch the readers and draw their attention. So it is basically it has to it is the place where you introduce your ideas. So you have to make a first impression with a your good introduction. So it is vital to begin strongly,
Okay.
and first we have to start broadly, like the subject area where you're working on.
Okay.
So you have to give a broad introduction, like a para or so, and then you have to narrow down to your specific research area for your particular focus.
Okay.
So then you have to tell them why your research topic is worth reading about and why your paper warrants their attention. So these are the important point you have to take into aim.
Okay.
So we have to in the aim and we have to state the aims and importance and say why you want to what you want to achieve and why your reader should be interested in finding out whether you achieve it. And then another point we have to consider it, we have to cite it thoroughly, but not excessively. Some people will cite too many references.
Yeah.
But we have to be very judicious in doing the citation and the referencing section. So we have to avoid giving too many citation for one point.
Okay.
And we have to clearly state either the hypothesis or the research question should be very clearly stated. So these all done, and it should give a overview of the paper except the results section. So it is so as I said before. So you start broadly and come down to your particular research hypothesis or question. So you always keep it short. Generally, a good target is about 500 to 1,000 words. It depends again upon the journal's guidelines.
Okay.
So this is what one has to keep in mind when we are formulating an introduction section.
Okay. Awesome. So, related to this question only, because the challenge with the introduction that comes up generally is like, as you mentioned, writing broadly and then making coming to the point, the focus. So, how to
Yeah.
understand the gap and the scope and objectives while working around the introduction?
Okay. So the gap is nothing but you have to prove or tell the audience that why your idea is filling the gap in the literature
Yeah.
by doing specific experiment or specific work,
Yeah.
the work of study. So that's the gap statement is basically knowledge of the scientist in the field of research of your study.
Okay.
So this we have to first identify the gap. That is the aim of the paper actually, the scope of the paper.
Okay.
because not only the paper, your work, whatever work you have done. So that is the gap you have to find out. And it can be not only in writing a journal article, it could be a poster or in important session, a research proposal. Everywhere this gap statement comes in. So we have to identify the gap.
Yeah.
And it might be a like example, lack of understanding about how well a particular instrument worked in a certain situation,
Yeah.
or it could be introducing a new method that needs to be tested.
Okay.
Likewise, so we have to identify the gap and fill in properly with the scope and objective in the introduction section.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then another question that is which generally comes up a lot. It is like, what are the essentials when working around the experimental part?
Okay. So experimental part, whenever you think about the experimental part, what comes to mind is dealing with instrument.
Yeah.
But it is not necessarily be, because it depends on the researcher's field. So if as being I'm an experimental biophysical chemist, I make use of a lot of instruments.
Okay.
So, but there are people who work on theoretical models. There are people who work on surveys, etc. So we have to develop a specific question or query and identify specific focus for research based on the knowledge development.
Yeah.
So some of them are how to plan a research experiment and then state the hypothesis to be tested.
Mhm.
And then we have to formulate a context and formulate a theoretical model if it is necessary, and then design the experiment and construct the experiment
Yeah.
and test the experimental apparatus. So first what we have to do is we do the preliminary experiments, and then we perform the experiments. So we repeat this to get a identical data, or to find the error analysis. So these are the few things we have to consider while planning for an experiment.
Okay. And then how do you write briefly about the instruments under the experimental part?
Okay. As I said before, the experimental part need not be a physical instrument.
True.
So it could be, it's a research instrument is basically, it's a tool to collect data,
Yeah.
measure and analyze data related to one's research interest.
Mhm.
So it could include, other than the physical instruments, say like something like a spectrometer or something like that. It can also include interviews, tests, surveys, or checklists. So the whatever the research instrument needed for a particular experiment is determined by the researcher, and it's tied to the study of methodology.
Okay.
So if you have a good research instrument, it could be anything. It could be a physical instrument measuring something, or it could be a survey. So it has to have the following good characteristics.
Yeah.
It has to be valid and reliable,
Okay.
and it has to it should be able to test the hypothesis and get an answer for the proposed research questions under the investigation. And it should be free of bias and appropriate for the context and culture and diversity of the study site. And it should contain clear and definite instruction to use the instrument. So these are the things we have to consider when we are thinking about instrument for the doing an experiment.
Yeah.
Other than this, we have to also consider doing a lot of error analysis, like systematic errors, random errors, blunders, all has to be included in the while taking care of the instruments for the experimental part. Yeah.
Okay. So, like as we know, while working on the scientific paper, a lot of students, we all do collectively a lot of research, and there's so many findings with experiments and everything. So, one of the major challenges that most of the students come across is how to justify the findings in their results and how to discuss about it.
Yeah, it's a good question, because the results and discussion section is the most interesting part of the paper, and it is the challenging part of the paper to write. So it should set out our key experimental result, including any statistical analysis of whether or not results are significant.
Yeah.
So the part of the results and discussion is to interpret and describe the significance of our findings
Okay.
in a way that people can understand it clearly, and we have to have in a position to explain any new findings or any new insight that emerged as a result of our study of the problem.
Yeah.
So the studying, writing this result and discussion in separate section allow us to focus first on what result we obtain
Mhm.
and set out clearly what happened in our experiments or in investigation without worrying about its implication.
Okay.
So this will help our mind to see the results clearly and help to sort them out in our head.
Yeah.
The many people find it easier to combine the result with the implication as they are too closely interrelated.
Okay.
So also we have to present in our results and discussion in a very way that it is easy for the reader to capture it. For
Okay.
instance, if you put like 20 pages of dense tables
Yeah.
with so many data here and there, and then which is not very what you call friendly to read
Mhm.
and understand. Instead of you can reduce it like instead of 20 pages of tables, you can put it like a table, a well chosen graph, an illustration.
Okay.
So like that you can break down, and this will make the things much clearer.
Okay.
And it's in case if your results are not what you expected or controversial,
Mhm.
so you have to be in a position to justify
Yeah.
and explain why you think that why you obtained them.
Okay.
So like this, you have to consider so many factors while we are formulating the results and discussion. Yeah.
Okay. So, connecting with this question itself, how to acknowledge these references in these results and discussions?
Okay. Acknowledging a references is a part of the writing entire paper, except your abstract. Sometimes in some journals they do it in abstract section,
Yeah.
but introduction has lot of references. But if you come to results and discussion, we have to cover any literature supporting our interpretation of the significance. So we should be thorough in the literature so that we can reference while we are doing the results and discussion part.
Mhm.
It does not have to include everything we did, particularly for a doctorate dissertation. But if you're doing something like undergrad or master thesis, so you have to include most of the citation. But for doctoral thesis, you don't have to include so many of them. But for if you're writing a manuscript, if
Mhm.
your failure to sufficiently cite other work, which can reduce the chances of being published.
Okay.
So every statement of fact or description of previous findings requires a supporting references.
Yeah.
So we have to be sure to cite publication also with disagree with yours,
Okay.
so that you have a counter interactive arguments.
Hmm.
So you have to cite those works which is not agreeing with whatever you found out.
Okay.
So it is also important to be concise. So we cannot put so many references in every section. So we have to be judicious to have a optimum number of references which can balance the entire paper. At the same time, your references should not what you call should not be misleading,
Okay.
and it has to be to the point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, as we discussed about the importance of writing the abstract, and one of the very common thing that we all observe is like, and it's extremely important also writing a good conclusion. And
Mhm.
the challenge tends to be like, the abstract, the introduction, or the conclusion, they might look similar. So, how
Mhm.
distinct it should be, the conclusion, how distinct it should be from the journal abstract.
Okay. So about abstract we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
So they are independent short text. It's like a trailer of a movie. So it is the 10% of the paper's length and about 250 words. So it captures the essence of the paper to let people decide quickly if it is their interest or not.
Mhm.
So at the same time, a good abstract should generate curiosity and excitement among the audience by making a proper impression upon the target reader.
Yeah.
But if you're looking into the conclusion,
Mhm.
it should start. It is a summary of your results and discussion mostly.
Yeah.
So it must always start by addressing the main topic of the work
Okay.
in order to remind the reader where it all began. So next step, you have to move forward to the results previously discussed at some point in the paper, and then few words, and then aim to put everything in the table in order to finish the line of the thought presented throughout the document. So it is not only important to bring forward results and findings, but also you have to stress the significance,
Yeah.
what you have found out from your own work,
Mhm.
and that is all come in the summary section, conclusion section.
Yeah.
So in not only that, you also have to give a future direction of your work.
Okay.
So this is how you have to write a conclusion.
Okay. So anything anything specific you can mention that can make our conclusion very effective, because we understand how to do it. But anything
Mhm.
which can make it very impactful, like if somebody is reading the conclusion, so they should feel like at the end of the movie there should be that little kick, like
Yeah,
wow. So how should we go
yeah.
about that?
So important point we consider the conclusion is the summary of your results,
Yeah.
and what is your present, and what more catchy is the future. So how imaginative
Okay.
or how thoughtful you're about to think about your problem, which need not be in your domain. For instance, if I'm working on a problem X, and it can have do not have the only application only in the field of X, it can be Y, Z also.
Yeah.
So how we can expand our horizon and do the conclude the paper is the catching point.
Yeah.
So that's a very important point to do our conclusion. Yeah.
That sounds awesome. So another of the question that comes up, like at the end of the all the efforts, there are a lot of people. It's not always one person's
Mm.
effort when working around the scientific paper, writing it. There's a lot of research. There's a lot of questions being asked. There's a lot of guidance required. Then,
Correct.
how to work around to write a good acknowledgement?
Okay. So acknowledgement part comes. So there are two set of people who defining who is acknowledged.
Yeah.
So it's integral part of any academic research paper. So it provides appropriate recognition to all the contributors for their hard work.
Yeah.
So for instance, it is mainly two groups. One is authors, which
Yeah.
are mostly acknowledged along with the title and their affiliations, and non-authors. It could be colleagues, friends, supervisor, etc. And then funding services, sources, editing services, administrative staff who help with all the administrative thing to bring a paper to publications.
Okay.
So acknowledgement should be also provided for something like if you take a writing assistant or technical editing, language editing, and proof editing. So proofreading, some of your friends may jump in to read a paper for language correction,
Sure.
or some data analysis, looking into the data analysis, somebody who is expert, but not directly involved in the work. So they all come under the non-author contributions. So they may be helpful in doing a lot of work, like they may be in the, they may be involved in the money which is coming from a certain project. They may be in person who are involved in the seeking the project funding.
Okay.
And another might be a supervisor laboratory staff, like a lab manager or a technical assistant. So all these people have to be acknowledged, but not very extensively.
Okay.
So you have to have a balance. So you have to decide who goes in the author list and who goes in the non-author list, and then they're the non-author list, and then it comes under the acknowledgement part.
Wow, that's awesome. So, like it has been a great session. So, before concluding the our session, I would like to ask you, like, if you can, because with your experience and you are also a mentor, so I would like to ask if you can give any interesting advice or any motivation to our young grads who are listening to you, how to keep going or how to make their research extremely effective.
Yeah, that's that's a good point. Because being I was a student once upon a
Yeah.
time. Yeah, graduate school, wherever you do, whether India or abroad, I think I was in IIC Bangalore. So later I went to the US. So looking into the grad life of people, almost it comes to similar. They are look similar everywhere, and one has to go through like it's not certainly it's not better process. So we have the passion, keep going, and whenever there's down, there'll be up times and there'll be down times. So we have to keep our spirits up and motivate ourselves. That is more important, because there'll be support from family, like friends and the guide or mentor, whoever it is. But one has to keep our own motivation up, and also we have to keep going in spite of a lot of ups and downs. And this journey to the research, we have, and also we have to decide, like if you are in a chemistry major or something like that, third or fourth year, where I want to go next. That's more important. So we have to change our path according to, suppose I want to be academic, I want to be a professor, or I want to be a researcher, or I want to be industry, or I want to be a non-scientific career person.
Yeah.
So all these things one has to decide
Mhm.
before they graduate. So in that way they can have a very fruitful life, career life. Yeah.
Awesome. So, guys, this has been a great session, and it has been great listening to you, Dr. Sri Ranjani. And I personally enjoyed listening to you. There's so much learning that has happened. And I'm sure our audience has also learned a lot from your knowledge and experience. And from the team of Raynora, we thank you for joining our today's session. And I hope you also had a great time today.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Nidhi.
And thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully, we'll catch up soon on some other interesting
Sure.
topic.
Sure.
Have a
See you.
great
Have a